Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss the new stories we share. Let's begin. The rain came down in sheets that night. Cold, relentless. The kind of October rain that seeps into your bones and makes you question every decision that brought you to this moment. I was standing on my front porch at 2:17 in the morning, holding a cup of coffee I didn't remember making, staring at nothing. Sleep hadn't come easy for 3 years, not since the divorce. Not since she walked out and took everything warm with her. That's when I heard it. A sound so faint, so fragile, I almost convinced myself it was the wind. But it came again. A whimper, a cry, something alive, something helpless, somewhere in the darkness beyond my porch light. My name is Marcus. I'm 34 years old. I work as an electrician in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. I live alone in a house that's too big for one person, with rooms I haven't entered in months. I am nobody special. Nobody who should matter in any story worth telling. But that night, everything changed. I set down my coffee and stepped into the rain. The cold hit me immediately, soaking through my t-shirt, plastering my hair to my forehead. I didn't care. That sound pulled me forward like a rope tied around my chest. The crying grew louder as I walked down my driveway. My feet splashed through puddles, my heart hammering against my ribs. And then I saw it. A cardboard box, sitting at the edge of my property, right where the driveway meets the street. Just a regular brown box, the kind you'd get from Amazon. But this box was moving, breathing, alive. I dropped to my knees in the wet gravel. Oh my God! Inside that box, wrapped in a thin pink blanket already soaked through with rain, was a baby. A newborn, tiny fists clenched, face scrunched up in distress, crying with everything she had. My hands trembled as I lifted her out. She weighed almost nothing. Her skin was cold, too cold. I pressed her against my chest and covered her with my body, shielding her from the rain as I stumbled back toward the house. "It's okay," I whispered, my voice cracking. I've got you. Inside, I grabbed a towel from the bathroom and wrapped her tight. Her crying softened as the warmth surrounded her. Those tiny eyes, barely open, seemed to search for something. Someone who does this, who leaves a baby in a box in the rain. I was about to call 911 when I noticed something else in the box. I'd been so focused on the baby I hadn't seen it. A photograph, face down, wet at the edges but still intact. I picked it up with shaking fingers and turned it over. The world stopped. The woman in the photo was holding the same baby, same pink blanket, same tiny face. But it wasn't the baby that made my heart stop beating. It was her, Elena, the woman I'd loved more than anything in this world. The woman who vanished from my life 5 years ago without explanation, without goodbye, without a single word. Elena Rodriguez walked into my life on a Tuesday afternoon in the summer of 2017. I was working a job at a community center downtown, rewiring their ancient electrical system. She was teaching an art class to kids in the next room. I heard her laugh first, this bright, musical sound that cut through the buzz of my work and made me look up. She was standing in the doorway, paint smudges on her cheeks, watching me struggle with a particularly stubborn junction box. "You look like you're losing that fight," she said. "I never lose," I replied, right before the whole thing came apart in my hands and scattered screws across the floor. She laughed again, and something in my chest shifted. Something I hadn't felt in years, something I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. We started dating 3 weeks later. She was everything I wasn't. Creative, spontaneous, full of light. I was steady. Predictable, maybe even boring. But she said she loved that about me. She said I made her feel safe. "You're my anchor," she told me once, lying in my arms on a lazy Sunday morning. "Everything in my life has been chaos, but you're solid, you're real." I believed her. I believed everything. For 8 months, we built something beautiful, dinners that turned into long conversations that turned into falling asleep on the couch together. Weekend trips to nowhere special that felt like adventures. Plans for a future I'd stopped believing was possible. Then she disappeared. No warning. No fight, no explanation. One day she was there, leaving a toothbrush at my place and talking about maybe getting a dog together. The next day, her phone was disconnected. Her apartment was empty, her social media deleted. I drove past the community center 100 times, asked everyone who knew her, filed a missing persons report that went nowhere. She'd left town, they said eventually, moved away, started over somewhere else. But why? That question haunted me for years. I ran through every conversation, every moment, searching for the thing I'd done wrong. The thing that made her run, I never found it. Eventually, I stopped looking. I convinced myself she was just another person who decided I wasn't enough. Another piece of evidence that I was meant to be alone. I got married 2 years later. A woman named Sandra who was kind and practical and made sense on paper. We lasted 3 years before she sat me down and told me the truth I already knew. "You're still in love with someone else, Marcus. I can feel it every time you look through me instead of at me." She was right. She deserved better. Now standing in my living room with a crying newborn in my arms and a photograph that made no sense, all those old wounds ripped open fresh. The back of the photo had writing on it. Faded ink, slightly smeared from the rain, but still readable. Her name is Lily. She's yours. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. The next 48 hours exist in my memory as fragments, sharp moments separated by long stretches of fog. I called the hospital first. They told me to bring her in immediately. A nurse named Patricia, gray-haired and gentle, examined Lily while I stood there useless, answering questions I didn't have answers to. She's healthy, Patricia said finally. Maybe 2-3 days old, a little cold exposure, but no lasting damage. Whoever left her knew she'd be found quickly. She was left for me specifically, I said, my voice hollow. There was a note. The police came next, a detective named Williams who looked at me with practiced suspicion. I showed him the photograph, explained about Alina, watched his expression shift from skepticism to something more complicated. We'll run the fingerprints on the box, he said. See if anything turns up. In the meantime, we'll need to contact Child Protective Services. Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. Wait, the note said she's mine. She's my daughter. Sir, I understand this is emotional, but we need verification. DNA tests take time, and until then the child needs to be placed somewhere safe. Somewhere safe. As if the arms of her father weren't safe enough. I watched them take her. A social worker whose name I immediately forgot carried Lily out of the hospital in a car seat I hadn't provided to a foster home I'd never see. My daughter, my blood, gone before I'd even learned how to hold her properly. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. I hired a lawyer, filed for emergency custody, submitted to DNA testing that confirmed what I already knew in my heart. I was Lily's father. Alina had been pregnant when she left me. She'd carried my child, given birth to her, and never said a word. Why? The question consumed me. I barely slept, barely ate. I went to work because the alternative was sitting alone with my thoughts, and that was worse. My coworkers noticed something was wrong, but knew better than to ask. I'd never been the type to share. The day they let me bring her home, I sat in my truck in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could move. She was inside in a car seat, sleeping peacefully. This tiny, perfect person who had no idea how much her existence had broken me open. I don't know how to do this, I whispered to no one. I don't know how to be what you need. But I carried her inside anyway, set her down in the living room that suddenly felt different, warmer, like it had been waiting for her all along. That night I barely slept, not from insomnia this time, but from something else entirely. I kept getting up to check on her, to make sure she was breathing, to make sure she was real. At 3 in the morning, while I was warming a bottle with one hand and holding her with the other, I made myself a promise. I would find Alina. I would understand. Finding someone who doesn't want to be found is nearly impossible. I learned this the hard way, spending every free moment searching, researching, following leads that went nowhere. 3 months into my new life as a father, I got a break. A former colleague of Alina's from the community center remembered something. An emergency contact form she'd filled out years ago. A sister named Carmen, living in Detroit. I drove 4 hours on a Saturday morning, Lily sleeping in the backseat, to knock on a stranger's door and beg for answers. Carmen opened the door with suspicion in her eyes. She looked like Alina, same dark hair, same sharp cheekbones, but where Alina had been warm and open, Carmen was guarded, protective. I know who you are, she said before I could speak. Marcus, the electrician, she talked about you. Then you know I deserve the truth. She looked past me to the car seat visible through the window. That's her, that's Lily, that's her. Something in Carmen's face softened. She stepped aside and let me in. The story she told me took 2 hours and broke my heart in ways I didn't know were possible. Alina had been sick, not when I knew her but before. A mental health crisis in her early 20s that hospitalized her for months. She'd recovered, built a new life, become the woman I fell in love with, but the fear never left. She was terrified of passing it on, Carmen said quietly. When she found out she was pregnant, she panicked. She convinced herself that the kindest thing she could do was disappear. Let you move on, raise the baby herself where no one knew her history. That's insane, I said, my voice cracking. I would have stood by her, I would have helped. She knew that, that's exactly why she left. She loved you too much to watch you sacrifice everything for someone she thought was broken. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and tragic. Where is she now? Carmen's eyes filled with tears. She got worse after the pregnancy. The hormones, the isolation, the guilt. She tried to take care of Lily, but she was falling apart. She checked herself into a facility 2 weeks ago. That's when she decided to bring Lily to you. She said she couldn't trust herself anymore. But she trusted you. She always trusted you. I sat there in a stranger's living room, crying for a woman who had loved me so much that she destroyed herself trying to protect me from it. Carmen gave me the address of the facility, a residential treatment center about an hour outside the city. She told me visiting hours were limited, that Alina might not want to see me, that I should prepare myself for the worst. I drove there the next morning. The building was surprisingly peaceful. Green lawns, mature trees, none of the institutional coldness I'd expected. I signed in at the front desk, explained who I was, waited for what felt like hours. Then she walked into the visiting room. Alina, thinner than I remembered, older, eyes that held pain I couldn't begin to understand, but still her, still the woman who'd changed everything. She stopped just inside the door, staring at me like I might be a ghost. Marcus. Alina. Neither of us moved. The space between us was charged with 5 years of silence, of questions, of love that never found proper words. "I didn't think you'd come," she finally said. "Then you forgot who I am." She laughed, but there were tears in it. We sat across from each other at a small table near the window. I told her about finding Lily, about the fear and confusion, about the weeks of fighting for custody. She listened with her hands folded in her lap, nodding occasionally, absorbing the consequences of choices made from desperation. "I thought I was protecting you," she said when I finished. "Both of you. I thought if you didn't know, you could have a normal life, find someone healthy, be happy. You don't get to decide what makes me happy." The words came out sharper than I intended, but they were true. She'd made choices for me without asking, shaped my life without my consent, and somehow convinced herself it was kindness. "I know that now," she whispered. "I know everything I did was wrong, but in my head in those moments it made sense. That's the scariest part. It made perfect sense." I reached across the table and took her hand. She flinched at first, then relaxed into my grip. "I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to understand, to tell you that whatever happens next, you're not doing it alone anymore." She looked at me with something like wonder. "How can you say that after everything I did?" "Because I never stopped loving you. I tried, believe me, I tried, but some things don't have off switches." We talked for another hour, about her treatment plan, about her progress, about the future that seemed terrifying and hopeful in equal measure. She wasn't ready to come home, might not be for months. But there was a path forward, a possibility that hadn't existed before. When visiting hours ended, I stood to leave, then turned back. "There's something you should see." I pulled out my phone and showed her a picture of Lily, a photo I'd taken that morning of her sleeping in her crib, one tiny fist raised like she was preparing to fight the world. Alina's composure shattered. She covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. "She's beautiful, she's so beautiful." "She looks like you," I said. "And when she's older, she's going to know her mother, she's going to know the whole story, the real story, about a woman who loved her so much she nearly lost herself trying to do the right thing." Alina looked up at me through her tears. "I don't deserve this, I don't deserve you." I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "That's not your choice to make." I drove home that night with something I hadn't felt in years, hope, real hope. The kind that doesn't promise easy answers, just the courage to keep trying. Lily was waiting for me at Carmen's house, where I'd left her during my visit. I picked her up, held her close, and whispered into her tiny ear. "Your mom is coming back. It might take time, it might be hard, but we're going to be a family, I promise you." She cooed softly, completely unaware of the journey that had brought us here, completely unaware that she'd saved 2 broken people just by existing. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.